All right, so to get into just a little about the theory of what's going on here, it's a real simple progression. It's just a 1-4-5 blues progression in the key of F. So the one chord, it's all dominant chords, is an F chord to a B flat chord to an F to a C to a B flat back to F, right? But what he does is instead of just doing this, right, just sitting on the same chord voicings and just doing really stock voicings. He embellishes it with throwing in a bunch of different chords. He does some approach chords. It's just really cool. He adds a lot of movement to a standard first 4 bars of a blues progression. So the first chord he's doing is this one that we talked about. And basically that's just your F9 chord, right? But it's not playing the bass note, the A string F. And it's playing the 13th on top to start. So it's doing to give a nice little melody movement, right? And then it goes into, from that one chord, to get down to that B flat chord, which is the 4 chord, it does a nice little half step movement. So basically that next chord that he does is basically a B13, right? Which our 4 chord is a B flat 9 chord, or B flat dominant chord. So it's just approaching from half step above and getting down to there. But instead of playing that 13th voice, it goes there. So the melody movement is, right? So the first melodic movement is, and then on the next 2 chords it's, right? If you keep that 13 in there, it would be, which isn't really as strong, so it's a lot prettier. Right? So that's all it's doing. It's just doing a half step above the target chord that you're going to, which is that 4 chord. So the first 2 are, now what's happening there is basically you're about to go back to the 1 chord, right? So you have, you're going back to that 1 chord, and in going back to that 1 chord, instead of just going to that, again, it's kind of a half step approach, but to the 5 chord. So it's going to the 1. So you have, you're on this chord, the 4 chord, then you do, all right, which is going a half step above the C, which is the 5 chord, playing a dominant chord, going down to the C, which is the 5 chord, and then going back to the 1 chord. Really nice tension kind of movement. But the voicings that are being used here, again, instead of your standard dominant 7 chord, it's not playing the root note of D flat, which is the half step above C, which is the 5 chord. Hope this isn't getting confusing. But instead of starting on that root note, you're starting on the major 3rd, then you have the dominant 7, then you have the flat 9, and then you have the 5th, right? So you have, right? It's just really nice, tense kind of chords with that flat 9 in there. But again, it's all just moving towards something. So it's half step above the 5 to the 1, right? Which is an F chord. But now the voicing on this F chord, instead of just playing that F9 or F dominant or something like that, it's playing the flat 7 in the root position. So the bass note is the flat 7 of F, right? Then you're playing the major 3rd, then you're playing the major 6th, right? And then you have the root note. So instead of this chord, you're moving the root note, which is your standard, everybody knows this dominant 7 voicing. You're moving the root down a whole step to the flat 7, right? And then you're moving this note, which is your dominant 7, you're moving that down to your 6th, right? Which is just a really nice chord voicing. So that walk down is. And so now you went to that one chord, and instead of just sticking on this one chord for a few measures, he goes down to this one chord, which is again an F dominant 13, but he approaches it again from a half step above, right? So you have, and now he's going to the 4 chord, right? He's going to that 4 chord, and what he does here is he does this really cool movement, and he resolves down. So he gets to that half step above the B flat chord. So he's on a B13, and he resolves down a half step. So he's just doing a half step above the chord back down. And the movement that he's doing is really cool because he's doing this, right? It's a diminished kind of movement. You're moving up in minor thirds. Right? So he got really nice diminished sound, which gets you a half step above the chord and then resolves down to the chord that you want to be on. So that whole thing is, and before he resolves down to that chord, he does this scale. And what he's doing is he's targeting that flat 7 of the B chord. And what's great about that scale is you get that half step movement at the end of the scale, and you're having a half step movement from this chord progression too. All right, it's a really complementary scale for this, and we'll get into, if you want to call this more exotic scale, we'll get into the details of it more later, but basically the notes are F, G flat, A flat, A, B, C, D, E flat, back to F. Right? And it works really well, again, because that half step movement on that last note, which targets the flat 7. Right? So that's basically the lick. All right, and just a little side note on the way the tablature was written in the magazine. This is something that I end up doing a lot. I usually transcribe this stuff myself. Even if it's written in a magazine, I'll just use the audio track and transcribe it myself, as opposed to watching what's written in tab, or watching what's written in the notation. And then I go back and I look at the notation and just make sure I got it right and all that. But the reason I do that is I like to come up with my own fingerings, the way, you know, things are more comfortable for myself. Also, if I'm really familiar with an artist, I'll know certain patterns or ways that they phrase things. So, you know, it comes a little more naturally than reading tablature or something and realizing that it was written kind of in a wonky way. Not saying this is completely wonky, it's just definitely different than I would play it. So that's what ended up happening. This last little scale run was, that's how I played it, because it was really easy when I had this last chord, just to keep my fingers in that same position. Right? The way they had it written, it was you're moving down a position and that first finger ends up sliding one note. And and then you're moving this kind of strange stretch. So I would try it both ways. That second way that they did it was the 7th fret to the 6th fret on the B string, then kind of a diminished half step, whole step kind of thing on the G string, where you have the 8, 7, 5, 4, all on the G string. Then you use your, if you want, your pinky or third finger on the 7th fret of the A string, and then the 6th fret of the A string. So it's either or. Gets the same feel, it's just more comfortable for me when I have that last chord just to stay right there. So try it out both ways for yourself and see which way you like, and I hope that helped you. I know it was a kind of a lot of analyzing of that, but if you really understand what's going on with the chord movement and the target tones and all that kind of stuff, you'll get a lot more mileage out of this kind of concept. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. Check out GuitarBreakdown.com and keep coming back. We have probably 4 or 5 more of these George Benson licks that we're going to do. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you like it, please subscribe and click like, and please share this with people on Facebook and any forum that you might go on. It really helps us out. Thanks, guys.